Purging is at last at hand. Day of doom is here. All that is evil, all that are lies, your parents, your leaders, those who would call themselves your judges, those who have lied and corrupted the earth, they shall all be cleansed.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good day, whatever time you've tuned in, you're in for a treat. We've got with us today one of our favorite guests, the Duke of Despair, the Grand Master of the analysis of collapse, greatest thing to come out of Sweden since Britt Eklund. Malcom Kyeyune is here with us once again. Welcome, Malcom.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's tough times these days to be a doomer because like everything is going so well, and you really have to try to see like the worst, see the bad side in everything, because otherwise you're gonna be overwhelmed by the suffocating optimism that's infected everyone.
Yeah, well, I
Oh
was just
man.
telling Ahnaf, I'm supposed to be the optimistic half of our Doom team, and it's getting harder because things just keep looking like they're going from bad to worse.
I
I
told
mean,
Sir Kenaz, that this is like the bumper harvest for the Doomers. So it's just like everyone's just walking up to you and it's like, okay, man, I gotta eat the correct chocolate cake. You're giving me too many offerings, man. But no, like good day, Sir Kenaz, good day, Sir Malcolm. Afternoon for the two of us, morning for Sir Kenaz. I guess we'll start with a very open-ended question. Sir Malcolm, is America fucked?
well, yes. I mean, I guess in the fullness of time, we all are actually.
Oh yeah, of course.
This is kind of a digression, but I had an interesting conversation with a friend um, recently about China, actually.
Mm.
And I had this experience on social media where like a guy from China started talking to me. And this was about like Israel, Palestine, or whatever, but um, he quickly laid on this whole like, oh well, like you poor Westerners, unlike us, super civilized, ascended Chinese people who have figured out life 3,000 years ago. Like you have all of these problems, but one day you will become like us, and then you will realize, and then your societies won't be plagued by problems anymore. And like my
Yeah.
reply to him at that point was basically like, I can see that like your generation in China, like people in your age cohort, you are the handmaidens of the coming collapse of the current dynasty.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
like this is how it always works. Like you have people who experience hardship and they build something, and then the people who are 30 years old today, whatever, like their entire life has just been China rising.
Yeah.
um like
Yeah.
obviously they're gonna be sitting around going like, oh, you poor monkey Europeans, like when you
Yeah.
ascend to like being real human beings, maybe your societies won't suck so much. And it's like, bro, we've been there 100 years ago. It's just that
That's
the
right.
shoe
Yeah.
was on the
Yeah.
other foot. And the
Oh
thing
yeah.
about China here is that what China is doing, like it's a textbook case of like it's a perfectly executed like industrialization, right? But like
Hmm.
we've had pretty good, like maybe not perfectly executed, but pretty damn close industrialization processes in the world before. China is not treading new ground. They're doing something that Germany and the UK and the US did 150 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the state of the US being so fucked today is a
Yeah.
direct consequence of um, the success of yesteryear, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
industrialization, it's about taking like natural resources and taking human resources in the form of, the peasantry,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and putting them into this amazing like industrial engine, and then eventually you run out of peasants, and then you run out of natural resources, and you
Oh yeah,
create
oh yeah.
all of these middle classes who, aren't
Yeah,
really used to working in factories or whatever. And then you have to
yeah,
move your factories somewhere else where people are poor
yeah.
and where there are
Yeah,
resources.
I always told people this like a while ago. I didn't quite put it in the exact terms, but thank you for that. But like when you see a bunch of homeless people and when you see the working poor and when you see all that other stuff, right? What that is that's just a natural consequence because you need that giant underclass and the optimal quote unquote group of people are the peasants, right? Peasants
Yeah,
from the countryside moving in, they pick up the skills, and oh, they are the fucking suckers and the slaves. And because they're the underclass, we get to enjoy this lifestyle, right? But then when you run out of that finite resource, what do you get? You get the working poor, the homeless, all this other stuff. And what you got to do is you got to artificially stimulate. So, oh, we just used up all the vanilla beans from Madagascar. Well, man, we got to do the artificial vanilla extract. What is that? Well, that's the fucking migration from like Somalia or whatever. But it's not the same thing because the
exactly.
migrant, yeah. So the migrant from Somalia has like a 70-year-old grandpa and like whatever. Like, but the 1800 Swedish peasant is like it's him, his wife, and like 12 kids or whatever, right? It's not the same fucking thing. And so it's like, well, man, migration will save us. Like, the libtards
Yeah,
and these people. Yeah, but it won't save you. That's the thing.
that's kind of the big secret with China, and this kind of, as I said, it's kind of a digression, but it's useful to keep China in mind, and the Chinese are riding high on the hog, but it's like there is kind of a, maybe not among the leadership, but among people who are 40 years old today, like they are just Westerners. I'm sorry to say. Like you
Yeah, yeah,
might
yeah, yeah,
have,
yeah.
like you might have your like uncle's favorite recipe for barbecue dog or whatever. Like I don't care. You're still just a German or a British person. Like you are a Westerner. You have taken a sort of Western mode of development, and you've fallen into the same intellectual trap of saying it's different this time, man. Which is exactly what Westerners once did. They looked at China, which was, a 3,000-year-old civilization, yada, yada, yada. But they said, yeah, but you are just a bunch of monkeys because you aren't like us. Look at our factories. Like this means
Mhm.
we have ascended to a higher state of human like consciousness, and we will always
Yeah.
be on top.
Oh, the West looked at the Ottomans and they said the same thing. They're like, oh, you guys are just a bunch of savages. Look at what we've done. Over
Yeah,
here, we do this other thing. And, over there, you people are decadent. I mean,
yeah.
like, it's easy to
But
talk like that when you discover coal, oil, and natural gas. But, like, these
but
things are
but this
finite and, yeah, yeah,
the secret sauce in like Chinese industrialization, and it's not the only thing you need, but it's something you definitely need. Like industrialization, when Sweden started industrializing, urbanization rates were at 15% or so.
yeah.
Today, urbanization rates are at like 85 to 90%. But the people who are not part of urbanization, they're basically, I mean, they're like me. Like if I lived
Mhm.
out in the sticks and I wrote columns or whatever with my, oh my God, my super slow broadband connection, it's only 10 megabit per second or whatever. Like it's real rustic living. Like if I did that instead of living in Uppsala, I would not still be a peasant. Like I would be a city dweller living in the countryside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But today, like urbanization rates are at 90% or above, and
Mhm.
the non-urbanized are still city dwellers. They're just like cringe LARPers.
Mhm.
Um, China today has like an urbanization rate of like I don't have the exact figure, and it's very high by historical terms, but we're talking like in the neighborhood of 75% or something,
Yeah.
or 65%, and that's a huge difference if you have a total country like a population size of 1.4 billion. You're talking hundreds of millions of people who are still like in some sense part of the peasant economy, and these people are like they're like your black like
Yeah.
brown coal or whatever. Like
I,
this
I
is
just
what you
pulled up the number.
use.
Yeah. I just pulled up the number. America 83%, China 64%.
Okay,
Urban
yeah,
population is 900 million. Okay, and then India is at 36% basically.
yeah,
And where's Bangladesh at? Bangladesh is at 40%. Wow. Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
So
Okay.
China has like this for any industrialized society, um, like um, like 45% rural population. That's insane.
Yeah.
That might actually be like in real terms if we abandon like the cringe larpers who uh like work for a financial firm or whatever, but they just have like a house out in the sticks. Like Chinese ruralites, they aren't they aren't part of the industrial economy in the same way. Like they haven't
Hmm.
been assimilated yet. Like in
Yeah.
real terms, China might have like everything between like a 6 to 10 times bigger rural population in terms of like people who you can shove into
Mhm.
the industrial machine compared to Sweden or compared to like Germany or whatever. So we are basically at total resource depletion for human
Yeah.
capital here,
Yeah.
and they're not. But how is China getting rich? By taking that 65% or 45% who don't live in cities and moving them to the cities. Eventually, that
Hmm.
45% will be 5%. And then you won't be able to like do this kind of short, like line must go up forever. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I've
Japan's at
never,
92%. Yeah,
yeah,
Japan's at 92%, and the change from 2020 to 2025, this is the estimate, is negative 0.3%.
yeah,
So the sweet spot, the mathematical trend seems to be 85% to 90% is where it kind of like hollows out, and then between 90 to 95% it begins to climb down, right?
yeah, that's
Um,
when the industrial economy starts collapsing.
yeah, yeah.
And it's
That seems to be
also
what's going on.
when,
Yeah.
like, if you think about it, I had this guy, another guy, like an American or something, going, like, he was posting a picture of like a mud hut, an African mud hut, like in the savannah. Um,
Okay.
and like some nice European like brick building. It might have been from Hamburg or Copenhagen or whatever. And like there was this like meme caption where it's like the
Oh, that's a
people who
normal meme
built
that they
this,
always
yeah,
use. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
the people who
Yeah.
built this, referring to the mud hut, are supposed to like enrich the people who built this, and then he pointed at like the 300-year-old
Yeah.
brick building or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
this
yeah.
is supposed to like somehow work out. And the guy who posted is pretty much like an ahistorical idiot, like everyone in the West. So he's like, I don't get it, like why these politicians want to take in these Africans or whatever. And so what I did
Yeah,
was
because the peasants make the shit, man. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't
the
I
seem to
just,
peasants
understand that.
weren't living in those
yeah,
brick buildings that
yeah,
he's like
yeah,
fapping about.
Yeah.
yeah. And
I
the thing
saw
is,
something very like this. There was a meme going around with somebody who was supposed to be a Peace Corps worker, and he was complaining, we'd teach the Africans how to farm with fertilizers. We'd front them the money to like use petroleum fertilizers. They'd get 6 times the harvest that they got, and then next year they'd be right back to farming with manure just like that. They just didn't, they weren't smart enough to get it. And what they missed was petroleum fertilizers are great so long as you have constant access to petroleum fertilizers. There's no guarantee you're going to have that in Africa, but you will have an inflated population thanks to the petroleum fertilizers. And when the petroleum runs out, you then have something Africa is not unfamiliar with, famine.
yeah,
It's those lifestyles worked.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
that
but
mud hut was like, I mean, the Crofters in the highlands before they got genocided were living in essentially mud huts. I mean, these Swedes were living in, wood and mud huts, but they served the purpose.
Yeah.
You could get them based on the immediate land. The idea that we're somehow superior because we use materials that require high degrees of specialization and trade routes to provide us with all the materials needed to make them. That's you're missing an important point here, being survivability.
Yeah, but just to finish the earlier point, like the what I did with that guy when he started posting the picture of the mud hut was I just went to like archival footage from people living like peasants in Sweden at the turn of the 20th century. So like late 19th, early 20th century. And like these people are living in fucking shacks, man. Like
Yeah.
the I would if I had to choose between one of the like really piss poor hovels these peasants lived in and a mud hut in Africa, I would choose the mud hut simply because I'm not gonna freeze to death in the winter, which is like kind of a risk if you're living in like these really drafty, really like poor, like almost collapsing log cabins. But like this guy had never seen that. Like he didn't really realize that, okay, Sweden, for example, like it was poor as shit. And the
Yeah.
people that you sort of mobilized into the industrial economy were basically the Africans living in mud huts. They had a lot of benefits, though, compared to the Africans, which is like much more solid demographics for one, and like less, you had to spend less money on them, and there were no like you could just use them up and throw them away in a way you can't do with immigrants. And there were a lot less standards in terms of like equal rights or whatever. Like these were the original Africans. But the problem is that the moment Sweden ran out of native Africans, that's when the industrial economy started going to hell. And when the US started running out of like native Africans that they could mobilize into the industrial economy, what happened? They started moving factories abroad.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna see the same thing in China, but also like this. To close the circle here and to return to why the U.S. is fucked. I mean, this is a historical cycle, right? It's like the Roman Empire. It has this really novel, really cool sort of economic model where it's like you expand militarily in order to capture more natural and human resources, aka slaves. And then with the wealth you extract from that, you invest into the military, and then you expand some more, and then you get more resources and more slaves. And you sort of, it becomes a virtuous cycle until like all the low-hanging fruit are gone. And then the moment you can't actually bring in more slaves to your economy, the entire system starts falling apart. And eventually they too have this, oh, I don't know, like we Romans aren't really like they're too good to like be part of the legions. We have to import 1 million like Visigoths or whatever. Like they ended up in the same. There's even like there's even like preserved letters or whatever writing, or at least from historians, saying that like the emperor during the Gothic crisis, like he was told that, oh man, like if we grant asylum to all of these Goths, it's gonna be like we're gonna make so much money. Like nothing has changed in 2,000 years. Like like the entire sort of thinking here was no different than the Social Democrats saying, "Oh, they're gonna save our pensions, man."
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
this is how historical cycles work, and eventually
the
Chinese are gonna figure out that no, it's not actually different. Like you did a model with a sort of limited runtime. It's like you're a yeast cell, and someone put you in this nice wort. And now you're just consuming all the sugar and shitting out alcohol. And it's like, oh man, this is going to go on forever. Well, yeah, that's what every yeast cell thinks until they die from alcohol poisoning.
Yeah. I just found something fascinating. So like you know like those arguments people make with regard to like why they moved to China, right? And several years ago I couldn't quite understand what they were saying. They were like I think Tim Cook or one of these guys they were saying, well, the reason we moved to China in the 21st century is not because they make cheap shit, right? Because you know, we can go to Bangladesh or Vietnam for that. The reason we do it is because of economies of scale. There's a mass concentration of labor and production and whatnot in China that you're not going to find in the rest of the world. And I couldn't quite understand it until I looked at the numbers. There are 900 million people in China in urban centers. In India, it's 500 million. In America, it's 200 something, 270 million, right? So you're talking about, I'm going to say one, two, three, triple, right? So 3x the urban population, right? 3x the urban population. You've got economies of scale with that. You've got all this other stuff going on. So, like, you know, you try to explain this to people, they're not going to understand. They're just going to be like, no, the Westerner and, you know, one of us is equal to 10 Chinamen or whatever. Like, you know, they want to be deluded, they can be deluded. But anyhow, going back to the topic of discussion after the tangent, which I think was very, very relevant, what do you gents make of the fact that, you know, we're beginning to see the financial plumbing fall apart? I mean, you know, I was paying attention to the crypto flash crash of like maybe 24, 48 hours ago. I was looking at all these like different you know, these are kind of like the finance nerds for like silver and gold, and they were just flat out saying that yeah, uh there seems to be problems with the bullion vaults and these other things, and silver seems to be headed towards like you know, not the ceiling being $50, but rather the support being $50 and what have you, right? And you know, like if silver and gold keep moving higher like this, man, I mean, the bonds are going to be dumped more and more and more. Because again, we have to remember that all these other asset classes, whether it's stocks and all these other things, they are made possible, right? The riskier asset classes are made possible due to like people parking their money in bonds. But if they're not parking their money in bonds and they're parking it in gold and silver, right? Is that not the end of, you know, the quote unquote international system that America built, right? That
Yeah.
seems to be what's happening right now before our very eyes.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of an interesting, like, people don't think back in time. Like we kind of live in a weird sort of timeless um period. I think that the end of the Soviet Union was kind of similar in a lot of ways,
Mm,
like in the day-to-day of it all.
mm,
But I remember when people were denying de-dollarization, this was in ancient history, so three
mm.
years ago.
Yeah.
Before the
Mm.
Ukraine war, if you said, okay, de-dollarization is going to happen, people looked at you like you had grown two heads. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, maybe in 70 years or something, bro.
Yeah.
Um, but in 70 years, you know, China is going to collapse from not enough children being born. So it's not going to happen then either. But if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in 70 or 100 years. Now, like, nobody even denies de-dollarization. It's just people have stopped talking about it.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, like, if you're sort of saying, okay, it's happening, then you're talking about it. But like nobody is really saying, approaching it from the other end, and nobody really wants to have a discussion of, okay, what's going to happen then, like in the short to medium term for the US, given that this is now happening. It's like not only are the Chinese buying gold, like the price of gold has doubled in dollar terms in a year. You have this huge trade war, and you also have like the dollar doing awful, like it's losing its value really quickly. The US government has given up on trying to manage the debt,
Yeah.
and it's got all of these like really morbid symptoms. It's like dependent on an AI like equities bubble. Um, and people are just openly saying it's all like circular financing. So you have like AI deals where it's like, okay, you sell us a million like graphics cards or whatever, and instead
Yeah.
of paying you, just like us announcing this deal is going to double your stock value. So you're going to be making like $100 billion or whatever. So like we should just get it for free. Because you giving us this is just going to lead to all of these speculative gains. Like once you hit that point, we're talking weeks. We're probably not even talking months, and we're sure as fuck not talking years.
Here's an interesting one. Here's an interesting one. Finance a lot. Just to segue off what you were saying. I don't think you understand how truly fucked we are. Imagine 2008, but more than 10x the leverage, plus a housing bubble, a commercial real estate bubble, a private lending bubble, and a stock market bubble with AI, all at the same time. We are in 1929.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's similar, but it's worse because the political situation in the US in 1929, it's not comparable to what it is today. I mean, yeah, you had Herbert Hoover, and if you play a Hearts of Iron 4 mod called Kaiserreich, yes, okay,
I like that one.
1929, it's only like 10 years or so before the Second American Civil War starts, but in reality, it didn't really turn out that way. Today, though, I mean, there's a pretty good case for another American Civil War, though it won't look like the first at all. But like, as I said before this show started, to understand the Trump administration today, like you really have to understand the parable of the drunk looking for keys under the lamppost. And I think I mentioned it on the show before, and it's kind of a well-known one. But basically, you have this drunk. A friend is coming home late at night. He sees his friend looking frantically under a lamppost, and he asks him, like, what's up? And he says, I'm looking for my keys. And then he sort of sees as he keeps looking and he's not finding them. So he eventually asks, are you sure this is where you dropped them? And then the guy says, oh, no. I dropped them over there in that like dark alley. But I'm looking for the keys right here because this is the only place with a lamppost. And, you know, well, like it's kind of like a human behavior to do that kind of thing, where it's like you look for solutions, not where they're actually located, but where it's comfortable for you to look for them. And if you think about the Trump's policies right now, like where the focus is, I mean, apart from war with Venezuela, which is kind of like that seems to be the personal project of Marco Rubio. It's not even Trump's thing. And Trump seems like more absent and senile. But like the thing that Trump is really invested in, that he's really like, here the energy is coming from Trump himself. It's like this deploying the military domestically and sort of occupying Washington or Chicago or whatever. And that is kind of like, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Because right now, like the plan is to send in, I don't know, like 300 state troopers into a city like Chicago, population 2.6 million people.
Yeah.
And like these people, like these troopers have no training in like preventing crime. They can't make arrests. That's incredibly illegal. Like what they can do is provide physical protection for like an ICE building or whatever. But like Trump is talking about civil war, using these to like shoot at Democrats and so on. It's kind of like wrestling in a way, where you have all of these like built up sort of rivalries between the baby faces, the ones you're supposed to cheer for, and the heels, which are the ones you're supposed to boo for.
Give this man a cigar. Trump actually participated in at least one WrestleMania. He was most famous for clotheslining Vince McMahon, but I thought he was most famous for shaving off.
I thought he was most famous for shaving off Vince McMahon's hair.
Okay, there you go. Well, I mean, I've been calling Trump the kayfabe president because he creates spectacles. He creates these huge, like, things. He gets his base riled up, And like professional wrestling fans, and I think this is very important, Trump's base doesn't really care if he's telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
They're just there to be entertained.
But there is kind of an interesting aspect here, because in the jargon of wrestling, I was told this by an expert. Like, you have these terms. You have one term called work or a work. And a work is just like the wrestling term for referring to the entire sort of act of wrestling, like the play, like the fantasy, like playing a character is doing a work. So if you're a heel, like, your actions inside the ring, but also outside of it, are all part of like your work. And like it's all like you have to. There was kind of this incident with one, like, a female wrestler who was stopped by a police officer or whatever in Canada, and she played like she acted like as her persona, like her wrestling persona would. And so she kind of flipped those cops off and called them like worms or whatever. And eventually, like, a lot of fans got mad at her for this. And then the other thing happened, which is in wrestling called a shoot. And a shoot is when, like, the sort of the reality bubble is pierced, and like real life intrudes upon like wrestling. So in this case, what she had to do, like this wrestler, she had to do a public like letter, and she didn't use her wrestling name but her given name, like explaining that, sorry, like, the cop was in on it. It wasn't actually a real arrest or anything. Like, this was just, like, we were just having some fun. So I don't really hate cops. Like, I have great respect for cops. But like, it's kind of, you with wrestling, you have this interesting thing where you eventually have all of these like weird situations called shoots, where it's like the play becomes a reality in a very chaotic and sort of foreseen and sort of unwanted way. So one of the most dramatic examples of this, and this has probably happened at some point, is like, if you have a wrestling fan who takes this thing a bit too seriously, and he has his baby face who got like really sort of ridiculed or whatever by the heel. And so the wrestling fan goes, aha, I have to avenge my wrestler, and just picks up a gun and shoots the heel. Like, at that point, like, everyone says, okay, what the fuck, like, time out. Like, this is a disaster. It was never supposed to go this far. Like, this guy, this wrestling fan who thought he was helping or defending the honor of this wrestler he's a fan of. Like, no, like, this is kind of like a breach of containment. And I bring this all up because what Trump is doing with all of this military stuff, it's in my view, it's almost like designed to trigger like this sort of step from, oh, it's just WrestleMania, into, okay, now things are collapsing for real.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if you're on Substack or not, but that's exactly it. It's like the reality bubble is getting pierced, right? Like, people are like writing this bullshit of like, oh, trust the plan, patriots in control, postocracy, we will do things that have never been done before. Meanwhile, the soybean farmers are getting destroyed. People in lumber and timber and these things are getting destroyed. Like, I was telling this to Sir Kenaz right before you showed up, but I was telling him, look, you can do this for a while, and then what's going to happen is the guy's going to hear you talk like this. He's going to be like, okay, I've been unemployed for 6 months. I can't feed my family and kids. This fucker who I've been reading on Substack for the last several months has been telling me all this stuff. I'm going to commit suicide anyways. Maybe I should just take him along with me, right?
Yeah.
Because, and this is I'm being 100% serious here. These people, they don't know what they're doing. They are playing with fire, and they're telling people all this bullshit that's not going to happen. Like, The factories are not going to come back in 6 months, man. America's not going to make rare earth, whatever the fuck, in 6 months. None of this shit's happening. America's collapsing. America's fucked. And you telling them this, you giving them this delusion and this false hope while they're starving, while they can't put food on the table for their families, it aggravates them, man. It makes them angrier. And like, okay, I'm an anonymous guy online. They're not gonna, you think they're not going to find you? You think they're not going to find you? Especially given all the false hope you've been feeding them for 1 to 2 years. Yeah, you better keep believing that. But come back to us in a few months and see how that works.
Yeah, there's that, but I'm talking like on a much higher plane here, like on a regime level. Like if you think about all of these sort of altercations between the federal government and the states.
Yeah.
It really is, to me, like it's really insane in a way, because again, the payoff of like the work here in wrestling seems to be fairly low. I mean, okay, yeah, it's kind of popular, I guess, with some Trump voters to send in the troops to Portland or whatever, because it's like, oh, Portland, it's so filled with crime. Yeah, but you know what? Portland is a Democrat city, so why do you care? Like if Democrats want to be robbed or whatever by drug addicts, like in the middle of the day, like you don't care about Democrats. Like you would laugh if you saw that in a video. You would say, yeah, that's what you deserve. So why exactly is it such a big deal that you have to go in and save the Democrats from themselves? Like there is kind of a real like incoherent sort of emotionalism to all of this. But also like sending in 200 troops to Portland, it activates a lot of like constitutional issues that if they are resolved in a bad way, you have basically given your enemies a massive head start on dissolving the union.
Yeah,
so if
I think that's been the problem I see in the United States, and it's a huge problem, is people don't care about the Constitution at this point. Most people care about their side winning. And if the Constitution gets in the way of that, well, then we need to maybe rethink the Constitution. There's like, I have never in my 60 years seen a time when America was so hungry for a tyrant on both sides. Both sides, we have like, essentially America has now become divided into two camps. Each camp thinks the other camp is not just wrong, they're ontologically evil. And each camp will cheer when their strong man comes in and starts locking up the people on the other side or shooting them. That's, that is the current climate in the United States. And I think that's a real problem we got to deal with here. It's the Constitution. Trump is doing this,
Sir Kenaz, you're echoing. Yeah, you're kind of echoing. I don't know what's going on with your audio.
How is this? Still echoing?
No, you're very muffled and you're loud for some reason. Anyhow, we'll fix that. But like, no, Sir Kenaz is absolutely right. And the thing is, being ontologically evil, well, like as Sir Malcolm was saying, like, well, you don't care about Democrats, man. Why the fuck do you care that, I don't know, 10 black people shot another 10 black people in Chicago? The reason they quote unquote care is not because they actually care, but because they need to have an excuse, right?
Yeah,
the country's falling apart. Yeah, the country's falling apart. This is the
lamppost. Like, they have a lot of real grievances, a lot of problems, and I mean, like the economy, they're part of it as much as any Democrat. But like, that is a very dark alley. But Portland is a very bright lamppost, and so they look for the keys over there. But like, the really relevant thing here is just if you think about a sort of checklist, what would be needed for any sort of serious secession or breakup of the union, it's kind of an evolved checklist in some ways, but like you basically need the states are dependent on the federal government for money. That's one thing. And so you would need to remove that aspect, like the carrot. So in a situation where where the states no longer get any sort of monetary benefit from being part of the union, you've basically disabled one of the safety interlocks. What is Trump's principal threat here to deal with his political opponents? Like Zoran Mamdani is slated to win like the mayoral election in New York City. And so what does Trump say? Well, if my political opponent wins, we are illegally going to basically withhold all of the funding that New York State has a right to. Like they're not going to get any money. Well, I mean, if you do that, they don't have any real reason to send you taxes, for example. And if you do that illegally, then you can't say, well, it's the law. You have to send us all of these tax receipts. Like you can't just break the law. I mean, yeah, they can because you did it first. So there's that.
Yeah.
But also, you would need some sort of major economic collapse as well, because otherwise, like if you're trying to form sort of a breakaway union or whatever, one of the big stumbling blocks is going to be the currency, like the US dollar. Are you going to keep using the US dollar even though like the printing presses are controlled by the federal government? Like that's kind of gnarly. Like in an ideal situation, you would want like it's something that requires a lot of work. It's a hurdle that takes a lot of sort of work to clear. But if you have a generalized like economic collapse where the dollar is losing value fast, suddenly like no matter if you stay or leave the union, like it doesn't make it any easier or harder because you still have to recreate some sort of fiscal or sort of currency stability. So what is Trump doing? He's basically crashing the currency. And then if you think about the political aspect of this, what would be needed for some sort of breakup of the union? Well, it's not something any individual state can do on their own. They would need to have some sort of pan-state like compact, some sort of working relationship with other states where they would get used to coordinating things on a regional rather than a federal basis, and where they could actually sort of dip their toes into arguing like for their own interests as a collective of states rather than as individual states. Well, that is already going on. Like Trump is on Truth Social doing the whole WrestleMania K4B bullshit, saying we should arrest, Governor J.B. Pritzker or send in the army to sort of use Democrats as target practice for the next war in the Middle East. And what does J.B. Pritzker say? Well, first of all, like this is illegal, so if you want to try, like come and get me, see how far you get. But also, there's this kind of organization for U.S. governors. I can't remember the name, but I think it's like every governor is a member of it. And Pritzker is saying, unless like this working organization of governors can actually issue like a political statement condemning what Trump is doing against the state of Illinois, Illinois might just leave this group. Because like it's no longer legitimate. And if you leave this group because it's been sort of politically polarized where state governors, like Republican state governors, refuse to condemn a blatant violation of states' rights because it's their guy doing it. Like what replaces that isn't nothing. What replaces that is some kind of organization for blue states.
Oh, that's exactly what I expect is happening, and I hope I'm not ringing too loud this time. What?
It went down a little bit, but it's still there. Yeah, but go ahead, Kenaz.
Like, let me try bringing the volume down here on this. Okay.
Maybe change your input source. Change your input source. That might like solve the problem. But like
let's see how my Razer Kaio works. Is this better?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is fine. That's fine.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, the thing about things being illegal, I'm going to do something I generally hate doing. I'm going to quote Ayn Rand here. The famous question is, the question is not who will let me, the question is who will stop me. If Donald Trump decides he's going to frog march J.B. Pritzker out of the governor's mansion at gunpoint with federal agents, who is going to stop him? Well, the Supreme Court says this. Trump says, yeah, well, the Supreme Court is corrupt and wrong, and I'm not listening to them. This is something I've noticed with a lot of Americans. They have been screaming for years that Trump is a tyrant, Trump is bringing in tyranny, and yet they still appear confident that, when the chips hit, when the shit hits the fan, that Trump will still like not behave like a tyrant and be like, well, I would be a tyrant, but I can't do that because that would be illegal.
This is kind of like this is kind of like Heather Cox Richardson and these types of people. These are like the true believers. They believe in like liberalism and all this other stuff. They're like, well, if enough of us people go out there and protest like in the no king stuff or whatever, and the tyrant will, he will back off, or he'll be like, oh, I'm not going to unleash my goons on you or whatever. Like, but that's not what's going to happen, Sir Kenaz. I mean, if Pritzker gets arrested, there's just going to be chaos and riots on the streets, right? It's not going to be like, well, Trump stops because, oh, the law says you got to stop now, man, right? Therefore, you will stop. It's just going to be like, okay, the shootings and, it's going to be Charlie Kirk and like, what's the name of that girl? Like Irina or whatever, times 1,000. That's basically what's going to happen.
Okay, no, I
Right.
expect that. I expect
Yeah.
things will accelerate. But what I'm saying is, as far as those marches go, I have two words that come to mind immediately are Tiananmen Square. You can put
Yeah.
marches down, with a little bit of effort. I know in Bangladesh they were able to shoot thousands of people and they'd keep coming on marching. I know they do that in Iran.
Well, that wasn't a march, Sir
Ireland,
Kenaz. That was just like, yeah. Well, the difference between Bangladesh and America and is that the Bangladeshis, they just stormed the parliament, right? And I mean, you could argue that, well, enough Americans are not going to storm well, I mean, January 6th, at least from the Democrat point of view, January 6th was a quote unquote storming of the government, right? So these things happen a lot. Like, and I think Sir Malcolm, you once said that these are very, very event driven. Yeah, like a few shootings happen here and there. One guy gets knifed, and then everyone emotionally they just surge forward, right?
Yeah.
And so like and so like you can't really say with certainty that, well, this is gonna be Tiananmen Square all over again. The reason I don't think it's gonna be Tiananmen Square is because there's no state capacity for that. Like I saw the fucking like what's the name of that idiot Hexet. I saw that Hexet guy rambling like a moron, and I saw the generals, and they're just like, why are we over here, man? What the fuck are we doing over here, right?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so like, yeah,
U.S. troops live from like paycheck to paycheck a lot of the time.
yeah.
And as the staffing issues have gotten worse and worse and worse, you as like soldiers often have to move around a lot. And when they move around, they have to take their families with them. And like, the soldier can get a new job, almost by definition, when he moves from, Alaska to Honolulu. His wife can't. If there's no jobs in Honolulu, and they need two incomes to pay rent, well, they're screwed. And a lot of screwing is going on. But with this government shutdown, which is very interesting in a way, because government shutdowns used to be big news. And now it's like, yeah, I guess we're having a shutdown. Are we going to get out of it? Yeah, who knows? Like, nobody even cares. Like, nobody even expects the government to work anymore. So, like, it's the fact that the government shutdown has become a big nothing burger in the sense that, yeah, it's happening and nobody even comments on it. That is what I think is the shape of the future rather than Tiananmen Square. But the point I was making about the troops is just that, well, with this shutdown, they're not going to get paid, man. Trump
Mhm.
mentioned something about like finding some way, like digging out money to pay the troops even through the shutdown. But normally speaking, that's Congress doing that. Congress says, yeah, okay, we're shutting down everything else, but not paying the troops. Like that's insane. Like you should never not pay the troops.
Yeah, yeah,
But this time they're not bothering with that. Like it's too much work. And so
yeah.
imagine trying, like the fucking troops are on food stamps or going to like charities, food pantries in order not to starve. And you're gonna send them in like without pay to
Mhm.
coup
Mhm.
like the
Mhm.
the like the small R Republican order of the United States. I'm sorry, like
Mhm.
I don't think there'll be many takers.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
like if you can't even pay them the wage they're owed because they're
Yeah.
soldiers, like
Yeah.
you can't really expect them to work the mother of all overtime shifts. Like, no, that's not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Like
this,
that's the thing. Yeah, like how are you gonna get them to quote unquote Tiananmen Square with American characteristics if you're not even paying them, man? I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not happening.
I mean,
Well, I don't
what could happen is just, you know, and you see this on the streets of Chicago, like, you have an ICE agent who feels threatened, pulls a gun and starts shooting people.
Hmm.
This is how, like, a lot of the time, like in the French revolutions of the 18th and 19th century, like how they really got going was basically a misunderstanding leading to some sort of shooting into a crowd, mass casualties.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you have like every time you have some sort of altercation that gets like kind of violent between ICE
Hmm.
agents and like
Hmm.
Americans, you're rolling like the 20-sided die.
Yeah.
And if it rolls a one, a natural one, that's a critical failure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's event driven, but I don't really think, and people have this like idea of Tiananmen Square as like this huge, massive, like cultural event. Like nobody even remembers it in China. It was just like, I mean, more people probably talk about Kent State in the US than Tiananmen Square in China. And not a lot of people talk about Kent State. It's certainly not something like weighing on the national consciousness in everyday life.
Hmm.
Um,
I actually just talked about Kent State in my latest Substack. And the thing I think people need to remember with Kent State is 58% of Americans thought at the time thought that the students were responsible for getting themselves shot.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I mean, the whole thing is the idea that troops shooting at protesters will trigger a revolution in the United States. What happened in 1970 was you were still seeing protests. The active people decided to, like, the more active revolutionaries went underground. We had a surge of terrorism, which I think Ahnaf and I are both expecting. We were fortunate then in that American terrorists were no red brigades. I mean, American
Yeah.
terrorists were by and large pretty incompetent. I mean, they blew a few things
Yeah. Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
but you know, they essentially went underground as everybody was like, look, I'm tired of all this like nonsense. I'm tired of these people protesting in the streets. I just want to go, we're out of Vietnam. I just want to go to the disco. The
Yeah.
Yeah.
difference I see happening here with us is you had the Reagan revolution, Reaganomics, and the economic boom of the 80s helped turn America much more Republican and conservative and made hippies and protesters look kind of silly and outdated. I don't see a Reaganomics revolution coming in the 2030s. In fact, I
No.
see
No. No. No.
the
No. No.
opposite. I expect that the 2030s are going to look like the 1930s. And I think
Yeah.
that's, in that situation, when you don't have prosperity to pacify people, things could get very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
And
oh, go ahead, Sir Malcolm.
yeah, I was just gonna add to that like the thing that is interesting here is just that what's going on right now is that like all of the guardrails are being dismantled for, that have been put in place in order to make sure that the federal, like Trump really is the American Gorbachev. Like that is who he is. Um, and you can already see like the same arc of his life where it's like, okay, first he's kind of a nobody, and then he comes in as this kind of like new blood or whatever, like this guy who, by dint of his own sort of idiosyncrasies, he's gonna fix the system because he's like new blood. Um, and then eventually, like it turns out that the guy doesn't actually, he's not competent, and
No,
he's
no,
not
no.
patient enough to understand the thing, like the levers he's messing with. And
Mm-hmm.
so Gorbachev, like at the peak of his career, he was idolized in much of Russia. Like he was gonna
Mm-hmm.
save them. And then at the nadir during the 90s, like this guy is seen as a fucking traitor, like as the antichrist. And then when he dies, which is like in the 2020s, everyone's like, yeah, whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the hatred has cooled, but like it's just apathy instead. But like
Mm-hmm.
Trump is dismantling all of the guardrails put in place, like
Mm-hmm.
that are, like when a bat, for example, like when it sleeps upside down, and people sometimes ask, well, okay, how don't they fall down like from their perch? Because I mean they're sleeping, right? So they can't, like how are they supposed to grip the tree branch or whatever? Well, it's because their muscles, like their leg muscle, is kind of like, you kind of need like a conscious effort to relax your grip.
Yeah.
Um, because that's how like bat legs are designed. So you can actually only let go of the branch if you're awake. If you're sleeping, it's impossible. Um, but the
Mm-hmm.
but the US system, the political system, it's been designed in the same way. Like if you think about the funding for the National Guard, for example, like in the old times of yore, all of the states had their own state militias, or most of them at least. And this
Mm-hmm.
was seen as like the what the US was supposed to do instead of standing armies. But if all
Yeah.
states have their own militias, like they have they're like 70% the way to being like full sovereigns. So what the US did was pretty clever. It basically said, oh, we're never going to take away your state militias because, like, states' rights, the founding fathers, we're not like those countries in Europe, but we're going to give your militia, we're going to rename it the National Guard, like the Texas National Guard, and we're going to give you tanks and attack helicopters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
isn't that really cool? Like before, you could never have tanks and attack helicopters like in the Texas National Guard. Now you do. But how do you repair those tanks and those
Yeah.
helicopters? Oh, well, that's controlled by the Pentagon. And how do you pay for the maintenance? And for that's also controlled by the Pentagon. Like you can't afford that, but we're gonna pay it for you. And how do you pay all of these soldiers' salaries? Oh, you don't have the money in Texas? Oh, that's no problem. Uncle
Yeah.
Sam will pay the money for you.
Yeah.
Look at all
Yeah.
of the free stuff you're getting. And suddenly, you've become like the bat. Like you can't actually pry the grip open like easily because
Mm-hmm.
like the entire thing has been designed so that like the you're sort of gripping the federal government, because otherwise, like how will these institutions that you are fond of, they can't keep running without the federal government. That
Mm-hmm.
was the very sneaky way in which the states were subverted, like their actual autonomy, which was really sizable once, like when the US was young. Like these
Mm-hmm.
were the US at its birth was like more decentralized than the modern European Union. But today it's not. Because again, like all of these institutions that are important to the states are completely sort of dependent on the federal government and federal funding. So what is Trump doing? He's abolishing that left, right, and center. Oh, you displeased us. Okay, well, now your National Guard, it's not going to get any more money. Oh, you elected the wrong candidate for mayor. Oh, well, now you're not going to get any more money for your homelessness programs or your food stamps or your farmers or whatever. Now you're going to be completely like thrown out into the wilderness. Well, the problem with that is if you throw California out in the wilderness and they get nothing from, you know, being part of the United States, they're not going to be part of the United States.
Yeah. And the people who are the sycophants for Trump, like the poor man's neoconservatives, aka the new right and the dissident right, the way they view it is, oh man, Trump is sticking it to them, man. Trump is sticking it to California. Trump is doing this. Trump is doing that. And it's like, no, buddy, what Trump is doing is he's giving all these guys a reason to band together, right? Like, what reason do they have to stay with America if, as you said, Sir Malcolm, they're not getting the funding and they're not getting any of this other stuff, right? You've given them a reason to become more autonomous and run their own affairs and what have you, and they might not do it immediately, but like the more incompetent you become and the more like, okay, well, we're going to try and do a Tiananmen Square massacre and we're going to fucking fail miserably. And, you know, California, Texas, you know, and all these other guys, they look at it and go, yeah, man, let's get out of here because this guy can't run the show. So
yeah,
you're kind of headed in that direction. And like, people still have this idea, like the libtards especially. They're like, you know, Trump is a fascist dictator, and I'm like, but it's not that exciting, man. He doesn't have that level of competence, right? He's like you were saying, the lamppost, and he's looking for the keys and whatever, man. Like he's gonna keep doing it, and he's gonna keep failing, right? Like this Venezuela thing. As soon as the Venezuela thing starts, right, are soldiers gonna magically start getting paid again? Is that what's going to happen? Or are they going to be like, hey, man, yeah, you know this Venezuela thing? Yeah, don't worry. Just like Iraq, it'll be over in 6 weeks. And after the 6 weeks, you guys are going to get paid. It's such a circus, man. Holy shit. That's where things are going.
Yeah, it really is kind of... I mean, again, I don't really... I guess I'm just sort of... shocked at just how tawdry this is. Like it's not even exciting anymore. It's just the only really like amazing thing about this is like the amazing depths of like sheer incompetence and venality. Like, and sometimes I have like people going like, oh, you're just saying that because you have an irrational hatred of Trump. Like you just hate him. Like he's the Messiah or the Lord of the Fall or the Orange King or whatever. And it's like, no, I used to be a fan of Trump. And I kind of feel silly about that because he does have this whole like he's like this ink blot where you can sort of read into your own narratives, saying like Trump is a figure of history. Like everyone, I've noticed this. Like
they want him, like Sir Malcolm. They want him to be a figure of history because, like you're saying, they're holding out for the hero, and they're like, well, Trump is a figure of history because dot. If he's not, then my life has no more meaning. That's literally what this is.
I think
that's
Trump
for
is a
normies.
So is Benedict Arnold. I mean, so
yeah.
You know, so is like what was it, Romulus? Romulus, the last emperor of Rome, was a historic figure.
Yeah.
He was 15 years old, and essentially they let him go back home and said, "Okay, son, you can't be emperor anymore. I'm the new emperor." But he was a figure of history. I mean, I think Trump will be a figure of history.
Definitely.
I think he's going to be, I don't know how kindly he'll be remembered as a figure of history.
I mean, he's just Gorbachev. He's Gorbachev, except more incompetent, much older, and
More
like,
retarded.
yeah, like with far less of an attention span. But it's like, the thing is, like he is in one way a very interesting figure of history, kind of like almost, I won't say unique, but I will say sort of extraordinary in a lot of ways. But again, and this is kind of like a self-reclamation, because if you're an intellectual or whatever, like you sort of live by thinking or selling takes or whatever, which is,
Yeah.
kind of my business. There is this temptation with Trump where it's like he does something and you immediately sort of think of that as that famous sort of parable of um what's the name again? Um yeah, Hegel, like Friedrich Hegel. Like he's in
Hmm.
in Vienna and he sees Napoleon riding by. And he's like,
Hmm.
here rides the world spirit past me, like in on the street of Vienna. Like I saw the world spirit on the back of a horse. Like everyone who's like an intellectual, they look at Trump and they go like, oh yeah, this is my time to shine. Like now I'm Hegel, and now I've been given the role of interpreting the world spirit inherent in
Hmm.
Trump. So there is kind of like a self-indulgent, almost like narcissistic aspect to it. And
Oh,
I have,
Sir Malcolm. It's like the fucking, we are the white man. We're gonna conquer Mars, and all, we're gonna tame the Martian desert. Dot 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 dot. Right after Elon fucking Musk sends us to Mars. Same
yeah,
thing with Trump, man. It's like, Trump, the God Emperor, like you were saying, the Geist of history or whatever the fuck. Trump will tame America and like rid it of the leftist and like black and brown Untermensch filth. And then another thing of whatever, like I am
yeah,
going to
but I
then be
mean, look,
whatever, yeah.
it doesn't, we don't have to knock down like the sort of um like white nationalists or whatever, people with these kind of odious,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
like
I just like
even
picking on them,
people
that's
who
all. Yeah,
have
yeah.
like even people who have like much more reasonable, which I would say about myself, like okay,
Mhm.
here we have like this birth of a new populism or whatever, or this
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
shift
Yeah.
of like the political coalitions, like the right is becoming much more worker friendly or whatever, like all of that shit was wrong too.
Oh yeah,
Like
oh yeah.
all of the stuff I wrote on Trump a couple of years ago, like most of it was incorrect because again, rather than being like, okay, maybe he is the world spirit or whatever, but like the way that works is like you don't, as an intellectual, you don't get to pick and choose. You don't get, like everyone tries to do it. It's like Trump means this. No, what Trump means is, himself and what he watched
Mhm.
on Fox News. And so what we're getting
And what he
instead
had for
of like,
breakfast. Yeah,
yeah,
and what he had for breakfast. It's
yeah,
like
and
he had
so
something different for breakfast and he'll change his views.
so what we are getting instead of like all of these visions, whether they're odious or
Mm.
not, or whether they're like about, defeating the left or making America white or great or whatever again. Like it doesn't matter. Like it can be the most reasonable thing in the world, but like that's not what we're getting. What we're getting is kind of like this ghost dance of like he's just Joe Biden. He's like the photo negative Joe Biden, where it's like Joe Biden has this, oh, you don't understand, Jack. When I was young, America was the greatest in the world, and it still is. Like just
Mm.
senility. And with Trump, it's the same fucking thing. It's
Yeah.
just like sheer senility at the end of an era. And everyone who dreamed about reforms and so on, including a lot of my friends who, joined the administration, they like it's
Mhm.
over, man. Like it's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
And
seems to be
like,
a common theme with late stage empires. Everybody is looking for, like, okay, Julius Caesar is going to come and save us, except, well, you know, throw Julius Caesar into post-Adrianople, the Western Roman Empire, and he'd have been just as helpless to do anything as everybody there else was. I mean, I think to an extent, you get these leaders because you get the leader that best suits the times. I mean, what could the greatest president of all time do to deal with the economic problems America faces?
Nothing.
What could they do with the decline of the American empire? I mean, if they inherited an overextended empire that is now starting to crumble along the fringes, which is the inevitable course of empire, is it reaches its reasonable limits, it goes beyond those limits, though the fringes start breaking down and the empire starts shrinking. I mean, that's like, it doesn't matter. You could put Napoleon in charge, you could put anybody in charge. There comes a certain point when the problem here is simply that America is in a decline phase, and it'd be nice if you found somebody who could ride the decline down, but what you're looking for is the person who's going to save it, and they're just going
we
to
all
hasten the
deserve
process.
what we all deserve, like all three of us and everyone else, we all deserve a bunch of fell for it again ribbons, because what we believed in was that, yes, the plane crash is inevitable, but hey, if the pilot properly steers, at least we can do some kind of crash landing and maybe some people will survive. But no, man, that's not what's going to happen, man. It's going to head straight into that cliff face and everyone's going to die. That's basically what's going to happen.
I mean, it's just like the level of incompetence and just venality. Like it's so stupid. Like it's Kash Patel going, "Rest easy, brother. I'll see you in Valhalla." Dude, you're a fucking Indian. And you're talking to Charlie Kirk, who's a Christian. He doesn't believe in Valhalla.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and it's like this, it's just government by podcasters. It's like this shit did not go on in the Soviet Union. It wasn't this bad. Like they didn't have podcasters running the government. And that is kind of, if you want to put it that way, that is kind of like the amazing thing about the Trump admin. It's like, it really is, it's the best at something, and that's being bad. But like if you're an American farmer, if you're an American trucker, if you're an American small business owner, if you are an American manufacturer, or large automobile company or whatever, in 2025, October 2025, congrats, you got fucked. You fell for it. You got screwed, and you had like the tree branch you were sitting on sawed off by these complete like sort of incompetence, nincompoops.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't worry. Like if you give Trump a fucking iPhone made of gold, where like the gold value is $20 million, like if you give him a bribe, he will probably like give you an exemption for his insane tariffs based on what he had for breakfast today, like program, until he fucking forgets it because it's 80 years old and like probably had a stroke. Like it really is kind of interesting to see like the classical sort of when prophecy fails dynamic playing out right now in American society at large. It's not just a cult. It's like 50% of the population at least have this same dilemma where it's like, okay, the faith you have had has been disproven. But now, if you under certain circumstances where it's like you've invested a lot, like personally, emotionally in the faith, and you're surrounded by a lot of other people who can give you a support structure to sort of remain a true believer, then yes, you will become a true believer. You will sort of double down and become even more sort of faithful, even as the prophecy fails. And if you don't have that, like you leave the cult.
Yeah. I think there's a deeper actually sickness, and Timothy Snyder, he talked about it. He called it pseudo-populism, right? He's one of these like true believers in liberalism. But the point he was making is that the reality of these people suffering is true, right? They are suffering, things are not getting better, all this other stuff. And so the populist people, right? These guys, Trump and these guys, what they do is they play on that and they're like, look, man, you're suffering, but look, we're going to make this other guy suffer, right? And this is where the jingling of the keys aspect comes in, right? The jingling of the keys. It's like, well, yes, man, you are a soybean farmer who got fucked because China didn't take your soybeans since May of this year. But okay, look, jingle, jingle, jingle. Look at the key jingling. Here's a 15-year-old quote unquote illegal immigrant in Chicago getting tackled to the ground. Now, don't you feel patriotic about your country all over again? That's what it's come down to, Sir Malcolm. Like that's all they got left. That's all they got left. It's like, I'm gonna jingle the keys. You feel bad, you're suffering, but hey man, look at this. Look at all this shit that we are inflicting on the black and brown Untermensch. Now you get to feel good about that. So it's just like pure dopamine at this point with regard to the whole fucking, like, what did you say? You called it like Cape shit, retard, goy slop country. Like that's basically what it is, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's sad to see, to be honest, but it's like, you kind of eventually you just have to shrug at it. I do have to go now, though. This was a bit shorter than usual, but I think we still covered a bunch of ground.
I think
80 minutes is fantastic.
80 minutes is fantastic. Thank you so much for showing up, Malcolm, and thank you, Ahnaf, and thank you to our listeners and to those who are still figuring that they can trust the plan.
Your soul is mine.